seats. We'd love to get started. Oh, wow, that was quick. Well, thank you so much to all of you for making time in your busy schedules to come out this evening and join us and take a pause from all the World Cup games. I was happy to see my team, Japan, make it into the next round, so I was very happy with that. But again, I'm very grateful to all of you for making time to come and join us on a very important topic to our community. I'm Margaret Abe-Koga, for those of you I have not had the chance to meet. I am the Santa Clara County Supervisor for District 5, and I represent the great opportunity and honor to represent Palo Alto, along with 8 other cities in the county. So I actually have the most cities in my district. I cover North County. I'm from Mountain View originally and served on Mountain View City Council for 4 terms before getting elected to the Board of Supervisors. We go into Los Altos Hills, and then the West Valley cities of Cupertino, Saratoga, Los Gatos, Monte Sereno, and then halfway into Almaden. So I'm very fortunate to have such amazing cities in my community, in my district. I'm also the vice chair of the county's Board of Supervisors Health and Hospital Committee, and that's where I have the opportunity to put the needs of our health needs of our community first, and especially regarding mental health policies that need to be strengthened, created, or modified. Today's town hall aims to understand meet the needs of our youth from elementary school age to college. This conversation is especially urgent in our community given the unfortunate death by suicide of students at Palo Alto in the last year. It's actually an issue, topic that's very personal to me. Some of you may have heard my story, but my older daughter has had challenges over the years with mental health, starting with depression, anxiety. She was bullied in middle school. Honestly, she kept that from us, from my husband and I, for quite a while. My upbringing, my parents are immigrants, or were immigrants from Japan, and not to stereotype, but there is truth to the stoicism of our Asian culture. And, I kind of grew up with that upbringing of, well, just suck it up and, deal. And I think my husband is also second generation Japanese Canadian, now American, but we really tried not to be that way. But it's hard to break some of those cultural traditions and some of the upbringing. And so my daughter went through quite a experience. And when we finally learned, and it was me seeing her one day just collapse on the ground from a panic attack, and I began to start to research, ask around, what is this? What do I do? And we began the journey into getting the help that we needed. And it's been over a 10-year process. She's in a great position now, and she lets me talk about this because she knows how important it is to share our stories. And I've certainly learned quite a bit about mental health, behavioral health, and I'm very glad and I'm grateful that I get to be at the county where we're able to provide services to our community. I appreciate very much, and I'd like to thank many folks who have been a part of organizing this. First of all, my partner today, my co-sponsor, Assemblymember Marc Berman. Thank you so much for doing this. We'll have a speech shortly. The City of Palo Alto for hosting us. The Palo Alto Community Fund for their fundraising efforts for Alto, Project Safety Net, and Youth Community Services for the snacks, drinks, and their partnership, and the organizations tabling today offering resources. I also wanted to acknowledge the elected officials with us tonight, and thank you so much again for making time to come out. There's quite a list, so if you could just do one clap after I say their name, that'll help us get through the list. So the Mayor of Palo Alto, Vicki Vinker, one clap, thank you. Palo Alto Councilmember Keith Reckdahl, Councilmember George Liu, Palo Alto Unified School District Trustee Chris Colohan, Jessica Spicer, Vice President of the Santa Clara County Board of Education. Heidi Emberling, former Palo Alto School Board Trustee. Devin Conley, Mountain View Lisbon School District Trustee. Bridget Watson, Sunnyvale School District Trustee. And Phil Palmer, former Trustee of the Mountain View Lisbon School District. Is that right? Yes. And I also wanted to introduce our Public Health Officer for the County of Santa Clara, and that is our Dr. Sarah Redman. And she is very important. I was going to share a little bit about what's happening at the county. I think you have probably read in the paper that we are faced with many challenges fiscally due to the HR 1 federal legislation that cut trillions of dollars in healthcare, especially with Medicaid, which is Medi-Cal in California. As you probably know, our county runs a health and hospital system. We run 4 hospitals. Most of our patients are Medi-Cal patients. 1 in 4 residents in our county actually are on Medi-Cal. But because of the federal cuts, we have seen about a $1.3 billion budget reduction. And our total budget's $14.7 billion. We just finished our budget process, but we have had to make some major cuts, unfortunately. And unfortunately, a lot of it has come from our behavioral health department. Our charge is to help everyone, regardless of ability to pay. The way the cuts have made it is that we really have to focus on what we call the downstream, the more severe cases, and unfortunately we're not able to have the funding to do some of the more upstream preventative work that frankly I think in the long term pays off better. So we're having to do some adjustments, and you may have read that part of that was we were slated to eliminate our suicide prevention program, and I know your fellow resident and leader, Vic Ojakian's been such a champion of the work there. It was slated to be eliminated. We have 5 staff there. We were able to save 3, and thanks to all of you who wrote in and advocated for that. And part of it is that that program is going to be falling under Dr. Redman, moving from behavioral health to her department. I actually see a lot of great opportunity with that move, and thinking about it as in a population-based manner. So I think there will be a silver lining to that move, and I just have a lot of confidence in Dr. Redman, so thank you for being here. I also wanted to thank you all for your advocacy. Another program we were able to save was the Alto program that was originally slated for elimination. But again, thank you to all of you for your advocacy. We were able to save the program. We had to reduce some of the resources there financially, but thank you, City of Palo Alto, for stepping up to help invest in that program. I know the Palo Alto Community Fund has been working hard to fundraise, and just really appreciate the partnership. And to be frank, county is in a situation where our resources, because we are having to reduce, we're going to have to lean into the community more, and we'll be looking for opportunities for partnership to keep these programs going. And you know, I've been in office for 20 years, I realize that it's a cycle and things will get better. So we are doing our best to hold on and just keep going until things swing back up. So, and I know they will. I just wanted to go over quickly the format for today. So we have a esteemed panel of speakers, and we will hear from all of them. And then after that, we will take questions from all of you. I have my staff here, my Chief of Staff, Mariko Sayak, in the back, and my Behavioral Health Policy Aide, Rob Moore, sitting in the back too, just raised his hand. And I have several interns. I'm really excited. I have eight interns in the office of high school and college students, and they are here today to help gather your cards. So if you have a question, please write them down on a card and raise them up, and we'll have someone pick those up and bring them up to have them answered. And I also want to thank my communications team here, Isabel Sanchez, my communications, social media, event planner extraordinaire. So with that, again, thank you so much, and I'd like to now ask my co-host, Assemblymember Berman, to give a few words. Thank you.
Well, thank you so much, Supervisor Abe-Koga, and good evening, everyone. And thank you all so much for being here and taking time out of your Thursday evening to really talk about and learn more about what's such a critically important issue for our communities, our communities that we represent. I represent the 23rd Assembly District, which covers a lot of the communities that Supervisor Abe-Koga represents in the county, as well in Santa Clara County, as well as a bunch of communities in San Mateo County, all the way up to Pacifica. So all of the San Mateo County coast, and then Atherton, Woodside, Portola Valley, and most of Menlo Park, in addition to a lot of the same North and West County cities in Santa Clara County. I want to begin by thanking Supervisor Abe-Koga for her partnership and her leadership in convening this important youth mental health town hall, and also for sharing your personal story. And thank you to your daughter for letting you share her personal story, because it's so important, and I think that really helps destigmatize issues around youth mental health, and it's important for all of us to talk more about it, and talk more about our personal experiences. I think there's a lot of power in that. Thank you as well to her staff, to my staff, to our panelists, to the educators, the mental health professionals, students, parents, advocates, and community members who have joined us tonight. The fact that so many people are here demonstrates something important, which is that youth mental health is not someone else's issue. It's all of our issue. It's our community's issue. It affects our schools, our families, our neighborhoods, and our future. And while the challenges facing young people today are significant, I believe there's reason to hope, because communities like ours are willing to have honest conversations and work together towards solutions. In recent years, we've witnessed a youth mental health crisis unlike anything that many of us have seen before. The COVID-19 pandemic disrupted students' lives at a critical stage of their development. Young people experienced isolation from friends and classmates, interruptions to their education, uncertainty about the future. And we have that with COVID, and we have that now with artificial intelligence. And I lost my train of thought. There it is. And the loss of important milestones and support systems. So even as schools reopened, many students continue to struggle with anxiety, depression, loneliness, and stress. Those challenges have been especially visible here in our region. The communities that I represent in Santa Clara and San Mateo counties are extraordinary places to grow up. I know I grew up here in Palo Alto, but they can also be places of intense pressure. Many students feel enormous expectations to excel academically, gain admission to highly selective colleges, participate in numerous extracurricular activities, and meet standards that can sometimes feel impossible to achieve. And Supervisor Abe-Koga talked about the interns that she has in our office, and we have some interns in our office, and I was reading their resumes, and I was blown away. I mean, these young people are doing so much more than I was growing up in Palo Alto in the 80s and 90s, and there was already a lot of pressure in Palo Alto in the 80s and 90s, and it's gotten so much more exponential since then. We're fortunate to live in a community that values education and achievement, but we must also ensure that our young people know that their worth is not defined by their GPA, a test score, a college acceptance letter, or any single accomplishment. Their value comes from who they are as human beings. Sadly, our communities have experienced firsthand the devastating consequences of youth mental health struggles. Palo Alto and neighboring communities have endured multiple clusters of youth suicides over the years, including one that happened when I was on the Palo Alto City Council in 2014-15, and one before I was on the City Council in 2008-2009. And these tragedies have shaken families, schools, and our entire region. And we know that some young people face, that some particular young people face additional burdens. Today, transgender, non-binary, and LGBTQIA+ youth are confronting not only the ordinary challenges of adolescence, but also a national political climate in which their identities are too often targeted, questioned, or used as political talking points. Research consistently shows that LGBTQIA+ youth experience higher rates of depression, anxiety, and suicidal ideation when they feel stigmatized, rejected, or unsafe. When leaders single out transgender young people for attack, it sends a message that they do not belong, and that message causes real harm. Every young person deserves to know that they are valued, respected, and supported exactly as they are. Our responsibility as adults is to create environments where all young people, including transgender, non-binary, and LGBTQIA+ youth, can thrive. Throughout my time in the legislature, I've worked to strengthen the systems that support student mental health. In 2018, I authored a bill that required schools with suicide prevention policies to regularly review, at minimum every 5 years, and update them so that they remain effective and responsive to students' needs. Also in 2018, I secured $1.7 million in the state budget funding to provide a free online suicide prevention training for middle and high school students and school teachers and administrators, which ran from June 2020 to December 2024 and trained more than 20,000 people statewide. In 2019, I'll skip that part, we're going long enough. But this year, I introduced another bill, AB 2003, which would create a free, permanent, statewide online suicide prevention training program. So similar to the effort in 2018, but make this available to all students, teachers, administrators, and parents of middle school and high school students in California, and this is something that will be for free and voluntary, because recognizing warning signs and knowing how to respond can save lives. This bill will be heard in the Senate Appropriations Committee on Monday, but I'm hoping that the bill will move through the process quickly, and it has been moving through the process quickly. It's actually been moving through too quickly. It's been moving through on consent, because there's bipartisan support for it from Democrats and Republicans, which is wonderful, and that deserves applause. But it also means I don't get to talk about it as much. Because when a bill is on consent, you don't actually present it at the committee hearings. And I want to talk about it. I want to talk about these issues and make sure that more people are talking about it. And I've been working with the state's Behavioral Health Service Oversight and Accountability Commission, and they are stepping up and putting up $1.5 million to develop this training. So everybody realizes how important this is. But legislation alone is not enough. Addressing this crisis, as Supervisor Abe-Koga said, involves all of us and requires all of us. Government, schools, healthcare providers, parents, community organizations, and young people themselves to work together. I want to shout out Brian Eisenberg, who I see in the audience, who's the Executive Director, CEO of Children's Health Council, which is a wonderful organization that supports young people and families in our communities. And they're also my 2026 Nonprofit of the Year. The work that you and all of your team do. And then Supervisor Abe-Koga mentioned Alto. I'm working with my colleague, Assemblymember Gail Pellerin, to try to get money in the budget to support the alcove in Palo Alto, which is right around the corner from my office, and all the other 11 alcoves across the state of California, because it's amazing that the county has stepped up, and thank you for doing that, and now we're getting Palo Alto Community Fund to step up, and that's amazing. My mom asked me, what do you know about alcove? I got an email from the Palo Alto Community Fund. And I said, let me tell you. But the state needs to step up also, and so I'm very hopeful that we'll have some good news on that, I think tomorrow, when we announce our budget. But tonight is part of this bigger overall effort. It's an opportunity to listen, learn, and discuss what more we can do to ensure that every young person has access to the support that they need and knows that they are never, ever, ever alone. So thank you all for being here and for your commitment to the well-being of all of our young people. And I look forward to tonight's conversation.
Thank you so much, Assemblymember Berman, and thank you for your leadership. It's really great to hear the news, and we'll be looking forward to hearing even more good news. And I agree, it is important to talk about it, but if it's gonna go on consent and sail through, I'll take that, and then we can have conversations afterwards.
Sure.
Now I'd like to introduce one of our very valued community partners, Becky Beacom from the Palo Alto Community Funds, and she is the board president. Welcome, Becky.
Thank you. Thank you. I'm going to need these and these. Your eyes are much younger than mine. So anyway, I feel in good company tonight. It's exciting to see all of you here. Good evening, everyone. And yes, I am Becky Beacom. I'm the president of the board of directors for the Palo Alto Community Fund. And on behalf of PACF, I really am delighted to be here with all of you tonight. Thank you. We are a community foundation that connects donors who care deeply about our community with hardworking nonprofits doing essential work on the ground, investing in organizations across Palo Alto, East Palo Alto, and Menlo Park to strengthen the health, equity, and well-being of our greater community. And for nearly 50 years, we've been doing exactly that. And although I'm speaking to you this evening as president of PACF, I'm also speaking from more than 4 decades of work in community health, with the last 20 years focused mainly on youth mental health and well-being. And throughout my career, I've seen firsthand the power of community and collaboration to improve health and respond to the challenges we all face together. Today, we find ourselves in one of those challenging moments again. And moments like these ask something of all of us. I've learned that in the difficult moments, the answer is rarely found in any one organization or profession. It's found in our people coming together and working together. And so before I say anything else, I want to say thank you to all of you for showing up tonight. And I thank you for being here in community for our young people. And a special thank you to Assemblymember Berman and Supervisor Abe-Koga for convening us tonight, and to your teams for making all of this happen. It takes courage and commitment to put youth mental health at the center of a public conversation. And our community is better for having elected leaders who show up, advocate, and help protect the resources our youth so desperately need. So we are truly, truly grateful. At PACF, youth mental health is not a new priority. For decades, we've partnered with and funded organizations on the front lines of this work, from CHC to YCS, CASI, Adolescent Counseling Services, and many others across our 3 communities. These are relationships built over years, grounded in trust, and sustained through the hard seasons as well as the hopeful ones. Today, our youth-serving organizations are working harder than ever, responding to a growing need with much fewer resources. Our young people are navigating a world that is more complex, seemingly more connected than ever before, and yet for many, more isolated than ever before. Many of our young people are carrying burdens that are difficult for the rest of us to see. And too often that pressure remains invisible until it isn't. What our young people need, alongside resources and professional support, is a sense that they truly belong, that their community cares and holds space for each and every one of them. Each year, PACF invests hundreds of thousands of dollars in programs that support children, youth, and families throughout our community. But this year, we decided that our traditional grant-making alone was not enough for this moment. So we're doing something we've never done before. This summer, PACF launched a community-wide campaign to raise both awareness and resources for youth mental health. To encourage broad community support, we've created a $25,000 challenge grant and will match every dollar donated, dollar for dollar. And at the heart of this effort is Alto, Palo Alto, this year's Dave Mitchell Impact Grantee. But more than a grantee, Alto represents the unique kind of accessible early support that can make a profound difference in the lives of young people. Together with Alum Rock Counseling Center, We're committed to helping ensure this vital resource continues to grow and serve our community. Our hope in sharing this isn't simply to tell you what PACF is doing. It's to invite each of us here tonight to ask the same question. What can I do within my own capacity, my own strengths, and sphere of influence to help meet this moment? PACF's answer was the community campaign for Alcove. Well, my invitation this evening is simple. Think about what you can do, and then ask yourself whether you might stretch just a little bit further. Show up in a new way. Join with others in community. Many partners are here tonight. PSN, CHC, YCS, Alcove, the Herd Alliance, and yes, PACF, we're here. Join our efforts, and thank you for joining us tonight. Our young people are counting on all of us. Thank you.
Great, we will now go to our panelists. I'm very pleased to be able to introduce our first speaker, Quinn Nguyen. And Quinn is a second-generation Vietnamese American born and raised in San Jose. She's currently studying at UC Berkeley, majoring in ethnic studies with a minor in education. She has a passion for mindfulness, racial healing, and mental health. Quinn received state awards in 2025 and 26 for outstanding advocacy for the Asian American, Native Hawaiian, Pacific Islander community. She is also a center, we can clap for that. She is also a Center Youth Collective Advisor at the Stanford Center for Youth Mental Health and Well-Being and a Fellow under the Asian American Foundation. As a Zen Buddhist practitioner, Quinn aspires to bring mindfulness, compassion, and engaged ethics into spaces of higher education to support students' individual and collective needs for holistic success. Quinn, thank you for being here and welcome, and I believe you'll be speaking on behalf of Alto. Thank you.
Thank you, Supervisor Abe-Koga, for the introduction. And firstly, good evening to everyone. Thank you for your presence and your care in being part of this conversation. I wanted to express my gratitude to our elected officials and to everyone in this room, regardless of what role you may play, as we each put our hand into the collective responsibility of caring for our youth's mental health and well-being. I'm here tonight to represent Youth Voice as a member of the Center Youth Collective at the Stanford Center for Youth Mental Health and Well-Being. I've been involved in the CYC for the last 2 years, and I've had the honor of working with the center to offer high-level feedback on the center's initiatives, of which Alto is the largest. I also had the opportunity to present along our adult allies at conferences and to be part of projects in developing culturally responsive tools, resources for youth and their families, such as starting conversations with their parents about mental health. But really what allows me to do all this work is grounding in and speaking from lived experience. As a teenager, I struggled with depression and anxiety throughout those years. And as someone who has consumed mental health services for many years, I remember feeling and noticing that there was no shortage of services in some cases. They are available and they're being offered, but the reality is that there are still many barriers to access and its effectiveness. In my experience, receiving therapy sometimes felt like just another thing added onto the calendar. The 1 hour I had once a week was helpful in that moment, but there was a lack of continuity and support once I left that office. And traditional clinical mental health services can sometimes feel siloed or compartmentalized, when in fact, youth are whole beings deserving of holistic care and support. So keeping this in mind, I believe that we need mental health services that speaks to and engages all aspects of our health and well-being. I also want to speak to the added difficulty in talking about mental health caused by stigma. As youth, we may brush our mental health struggles under the rug, not because it's easier for us, but because we want to or we need to stay strong. We need to show that we can get through a difficult moment. We want to avoid being invalidated. And at some point, the struggle just becomes normalized. As a high school student, I experienced firsthand the impacts that academic stressors have on our mental health. I went to a highly competitive high school, and I can tell you that peer pressure is a very real thing, whether that is academic pressure, measuring our success against one another, or even just the everyday challenges that teenagers face. This was also a high school with a predominantly Asian population, student population, so it felt like a vacuum of culturally impacted mental health struggles. I think it's really important to keep in mind those factors, the history and the legacies that we carry as well, because you have their whole families and the whole histories behind them. So at this high school, we were all stuck in this habit energy of striving for success. There was this unspoken expectation to climb the ladder to get to the most prestigious college, to be dual enrolled in community college to get ahead, to take as many APs or honors classes as offered. And somewhere along the line, we tend to forget that success is not attached to a piece of paper or a letter grade. There were days where I struggled to get through my classes, and I remember relying on teachers' open classrooms during break and lunch just to have a quiet space for myself, to gather myself and decompress before my next class. And as you can imagine, this isn't fair to the student or the teacher who needs that time and space to prepare. So, needless to say, I was disappointed by the lack of supportive spaces. But now, knowing that third spaces like Alto exist as a space by and for youth, I imagine I would have greatly benefited from having that as a high school student, to receive support outside of just a regular therapy sessions or the limitations of the school environment. And that's why I believe that we need continued funding to support our core services and support the sustainability of Alto, not just for the mental health support, but also for the staff and the community engagement, because community building takes time. Currently, we know that the holistic approach to caring for youth mental health works. And we also know that 30% of youth who utilize Alto services say that if it weren't for Alto, they wouldn't have any other place to turn to. But aside from that, although Alto may be a physical space to support mental health needs, it also embodies and models something much bigger. The value of community building, of knowing that you're not alone, of knowing that your experiences don't define you. Fostering community and trust like this allows youth to seek out mental health support and resources on their own terms with agency and with autonomy. And this is what is most effective, because each person receives and utilizes support in different ways. One of the main ways that we know works for youth is through peer-to-peer support, especially for ethnic communities where there may be cultural gaps between first and second generations, or for youth whose unique identities make it difficult for them to bring up mental health at home. Having safe spaces and networks where you can support one another while still feeling comfortable enough to turn to trusted adult allies is really important. We can also train our youth to be better equipped in conversation with their peers. And that's why the Center for Youth Mental Health and Wellbeing is creating Strength in Youth, a peer-to-peer support guide that is training youth to be better equipped in these conversations about mental health so that they have the capacity and the skills to support their peers. I also strongly believe that it takes a village to support a person. All the people in this room, the adults, the community members, we all have a role to play in addressing youth mental health struggles. We need parents who practice open-mindedness, non-judgmental, deep listening, who ask their youth how they can best support and who support their access to mental health services. We need teachers who uplift students' holistic well-being beyond their identity as a student, who make intentional choices to shift the narrative about success and academic achievement, who do small but powerful things like starting class with a mindful moment to center our well-being. And we need community members who continue to use their voice to uplift mental health and who affirm that mental health is part of our overall health, no different than the weight that our physical health carries. You know, we often hear the question, how can we do more to support youth mental health? And my answer to that is listen just for the sake of listening. Listen not to judge, to jump to conclusions, or even to propose a solution. But listen just to help the other person feel heard, seen, and understood. And above all, listen to youth perspectives and lived experiences as expert feedback. I've learned that understanding is the foundation for love, and we cannot love or care for our communities if we don't first understand our youth. So I share my lived experiences and my story with you today in hopes that it resonates and that it may support greater healing and transformation in our communities, and that it may be a reminder to you all that caring for our youth's mental health is a collective responsibility because our happiness and suffering is interconnected. A parent, teacher, or community member who is able to cultivate happiness and well-being in themselves can be a model for positive mental health simply through their way of being and their way of living. We can each play a part in reducing stigma, normalizing and asking for help, offering more patience and empathy to one another. And so regardless of what role you may play, each effort you make to support our youth mental health is a contribution to our collective well-being as a society. I know this is hard work, but it is also hard work. And I thank you all for being here.
Thank you so much, Quinn, for sharing your lived experience so eloquently and for reminding us how it really is, it takes a village for all of us to be able to support our youth. We will now Iris Blanchett. Iris is a recent high school graduate and youth advocate. She has a strong interest in student well-being, education, and community engagement. Through Iris's experiences navigating mental health resources and support systems available to students, she's developed a thoughtful perspective on the challenges young people face and the gaps that exist between available services and student needs. Iris also participates in the improvement of Gunn High School's mental health living skills curriculum. I also met Iris at the Pride Festival, that Palo Alto's first Pride Festival. I know that you were a leader or organizing that. So thank you. Welcome, and we'd love to hear from you.
You guys can hear. Hello? Oh, awesome. You guys can hear me. Hi, I'm Iris. And first of all, I'd like to thank Abe for inviting me to be part of this panel. Really appreciate it. So I would just like to say that this panel and this town hall is such an amazing first step in the process of understanding and helping youth deal with their mental health issues. But you know, that's all it really is. It's a first step. And it's a first step in a long, long journey. It's going to require so much patience, not just from youth, but from the entire community at large. Because mental health is not one of those issues where there's quick fix solutions that we can expect in like a week or a year or even 5 years. Something that we might not see the results of until long after any of us, are here. It might take like decades for us to really see the impact. So I've had to navigate a lot of challenging mental health issues in my time growing up here. I moved here at the start of 5th grade, so I've really spent the majority of my formative years here in Palo Alto. And yeah, I've had to deal with a lot. I actually have dealt with a lot of anxiety, especially going into high school. I felt very unprepared, and unfortunately, I hadn't heard about Alto at the time. So I was dealing with a lot of anxiety, and I was dealing just with a lot of loneliness. And it got to the point where I was eventually put on a 72-hour hold at a psychiatric ward. I'm not sure my voice quick, I'm sorry about that. But I haven't told anyone about this really in public. But yeah, so when I say I've lived through a lot, I've really lived through a lot. But through all of that, I've really seen both the strengths and shortcomings of the system we have in place. One thing I've learned is just how much young people really influence each other. I can't tell you how many times I found myself stressing over a grade or a test score because a friend was upset about receiving a B, or comparing myself to classmates who I thought were doing so much better than I was, or listening to that little voice inside my head telling me how I'm all alone because nobody likes me. So whether we realize it or not, youth really shape each other's perspectives every day. And because of that, because they shape each other's perspectives, they often turn to each other to support before they turn to adults. My parents didn't hear about the issues I was having until like the day of they were taking me to the psychiatric ward. My friends were the ones who were really helping me out along the way. And I don't think that's always necessarily a bad thing. I think youth relate to each other a lot more through shared experiences and challenges than maybe an adult can relate to them. But adults still play a critical role. Alto is run by some amazing trained professionals that I only wish I knew about when I was dealing with my issues. And what helps us most is what exactly Alto does. Alto listens to youth. Alto meets them where they're at. Alto, after I got discharged, I was in Alto for a bit, doing their little 3-week therapist. They had to be therapists there, and they actually afterwards called me and checked up on me. If I missed an appointment because I went to go to Chicago with my dad, and they called me and they asked me how I was doing. So what really works is when adults, I'm going to copy off you for a bit. I think it's when they listen to us and treat us as still matured, but valid human beings who have valid emotions, and they provide us opportunities and resources to kind of figure things out for ourselves rather than impose their own solutions on people. And sometimes support can be as simple as listening after a difficult day, or I'll give you an example. Let's say you're a parent and your student just comes home really beaten up about a test score. Instead of offering to get them a tutor, which maybe they don't want because they feel like it invalidates all the hard work they do, maybe you could offer them a quiet space in the house to study, because that will really validate their emotions without making them feel like they're necessarily doing something wrong. And I really think that part of the next steps, I said this is the first step, part of the next step is really continue investing in the spaces where young people can build healthy relationships with one another. It's great that we have Alto, but I gotta tell you, I was so bummed when I heard that they lost even a little bit of their funding. I think, not to dog on the supervisor. She's doing amazing work, but really, it's out of our control, but it's still something that really bumps me up. Because when these spaces exist, we create communities where students can support each other in positive ways. And if they're gone, you're back to 9th grade Iris, feeling all alone and feeling a lot of anxiety. And, real quick, when students don't have that support with one another, they often end up relying heavily on social media to fill that gap. And, ironically, that leaves them even more disconnected because social media, companies want you to feel anxious. They want you to feel alone when you use social media. So it's a poor solution to the problem of youth disconnection. And honestly, I'm just gonna say that I might not have had Alto, but I had essentially the same thing, which is a good support system in place with my parents and my friends, and just a lot And I guess the best thing about Alto is it helps the people who might not have the support system that I had to have a support system in place at all. And I think that's the best thing that can come from it. So, there's a lot of parents in the audience. When they were telling all of us who was going to be here, they said most of these people are adults. So the number one thing I'd say is just talk to your kid and, meet them where they're at. Don't treat them as a mature adult, but also don't treat them as a child. Treat them like their own person and try to meet them where they're at. So thank you.
Thank you so much, Iris. And you are absolutely right. This is the first step. And I hope that we can continue this conversation and dialogue and continue to move forward together. So thank you for sharing your story. We now have Dr. Shashank Joshi. I'm very delighted to introduce him. He's a professor and senior associate vice provost for academic well-being at Stanford University. He serves as director of the School for Mental Health and director of combined training in pediatrics, general psychiatry, and child and adolescent psychiatry for Stanford Children's Health. Dr. Joshi's publications focus on interpersonal collaboration, cultural aspects of pediatric health, well-being promotion in youth and young adults, and suicide prevention in school settings. He is co-founder of the HERD Alliance, that we heard about earlier, and lead author of the K-12 Toolkit for Mental Health Promotion and Suicide Prevention used by the California Department of Education. Thank you, Dr. Joshi, for joining us, and welcome.
Thank you. Well, I think our work is done for tonight, Dr. Gary. I also want to thank everyone for being here tonight. I especially want to thank Quinn and Iris, who I just got to meet today. We've been emailing, but we kind of had a run of show, thanks to Isabel. And I thought it was important for us to kind of know who we were. And hearing from them on Zoom was really important and informative. But sitting here with them on stage, I mean, frankly, I'm just speechless. I have some thoughts, but I think I'm going to keep my comments way briefer than I planned. I have 8 pages here that I printed out, but I think I'm going to do maybe a page and hand it to my colleague here next to me, George. So, as Supervisor Abe-Koga said, I'm Shashank Joshi. I use he, him pronouns. I have been in the community for many, many years as a faculty member, but I think most relevant for this room, my wife and I raised 3 boys in the community, and I was a Little League coach for 12 years, and I love this place. I love this community. I would do it all over again. And I think we can hold the struggles of our community and the strengths of our community together. Life is full of dialectics where 2 things can be true at the same time. And there's been a lot of talk here about Alto, and Alto as a solution. And there are very few panaceas in this work. I think Alto gets a lot of things right, and we are so fortunate to have the support of people in this room, especially the community fund, county supervisor who was really an advocate, convened us all here in this room and was open to hearing from the young people and really advocated for other people to get involved. In particular, the City of Palo Alto, Community Fund, Alum Rock Mental Health Counseling Services. We could not do this without the community. And as Becky Beacom has taught us for many, many years, the answers lie in the community. So although we needed the county to help us get started, and remember, as you heard from Iris and Quinn, Alto is a name that is from youth, about youth, by youth, for youth. Yes, there are professionals in the building available. If you are greeted by a young person, Alto is for all That's why it starts with A-L-L. It's not just for Al, some person named Al. You hear Alto a lot. All, right? And it's a code, a place you can hang out. Not just to get a connection with a peer, but maybe it's just a hangout space. Maybe it's a place where you can get support that's very specific, as Iris talked about. But we talk a lot about youth mental health. We talk about young people instead of talking with them. So really want to thank Assemblymember Berman and Supervisor Abe-Koga convening us together on stage here, and I feel very privileged to be with you all. So I guess I just want to share a couple of things that maybe are in response to some questions that came in from the audience. And if you have a note card that's come to you in a pen, and I see some of you writing, in a minute we're going to ask you to hand those over to the interns. And then we're going to collect them and try to answer as many of those as we can. So one of the questions that came up had to do with how we think about supporting all of our young people, in particular those who may identify as transgender or gender expansive. And what is it that actually works? I think this is an evolving field and it's evolving science. We are very fortunate to be living in this part of America and part of California that really invests in not only the clinical work of caring for young people in gender-affirming spaces, like at the Gender Clinic at Pacific Children's Hospital or at UCSF, but also in the community. And having conversations like these, they're not absolutely everything, but they're an important start. There was a question that came in about, how do we finally solve the issues around youth mental health? Well, what we are doing right now in this building at this moment is an important part of how we continue to work. Because we are hearing from young people, we are posing questions to our leaders who have convened us, our elected officials, many of whom are in the room, and former elected officials who show up. That was part of Supervisor Abe-Koga's introduction to showing up is a big part of the work. And when we show up for our young people who may be gender expansive, and when we use a young person's chosen name and their pronouns, that is not a political act. That is a loving act. That is a clinical act. That is a friendship act. And actually, there's science to show that when you pay attention to how someone wants to be named and their pronoun, that can actually reduce the risk for feeling a loss of belonging and even reducing the risk for suicidality. So paying attention to the things that we might take for granted that our young people have said are important to them, that's part of the solution. We have gender, sexuality, age-rate alliances and safe spaces at all of the schools in Santa Clara County, San Mateo County, at all the high schools, and now we're seeing them in middle schools as well. And that's a place to signal to every child, not just those who are gender fluid, that this is a place where you can exist fully for who you are and who you are becoming. We need to not only train the mental health staff in these kinds of issues, but especially the teachers, the coaches, the other youth-serving adults who we might sort of take for granted. But we've had several convenings with coaches in particular around these issues that have been highly attended by coaches and parents. And then family inclusion. When families are supported in understanding their young person, outcomes improve dramatically. And I think as Iris said, or as Quinn talked about, STEAM mental health is part of overall health. When you're a student, you have to be healthy enough to learn. And so where we have found the most success, and I think we have an extraordinary opportunity with our incoming superintendent, that when our leaders see mental health as part of overall health, and that our students have to be healthy enough to learn, and our teachers have to be healthy enough themselves to reach and teach their students. And our parents and our other youth-serving adults have to be able to get support. for themselves, not just to be there for their young people, but for themselves as well. So, I mentioned new leadership coming in. We have very strong leadership right now on the school board. I know we're going to have some candidates in the office. Lean into the conversations. Ask the hard questions. Not with grievance, but with openness and where we want Palo Alto schools to go, how to build on the success we've had, and how to take us to new places as it relates to youth mental health and thinking about it as part of overall health. The research exists, the models exist, the toolkits exist. What we need is the will and the partnership. And I think we're going to have that. So, thank you. The last thing I'll say is thank you, Isabel, for the cue. Every young person, I hope, in this room knows that they matter. The young people who are not in this room hopefully will feel that they matter, not because of what they produce or what they achieve, but because of who they are. That is the North Star for each of us in the room. So let's keep working.
Thank you so much, Dr. Joshi, for always providing your wisdom. We'll finally have our last speaker, who is Mr. George Shea. He's recently retired healthcare executive for Kaiser Permanente, Dignity Health, and El Camino Hospital. Currently, he serves on several nonprofit boards, a Citizens Advisory Committee for Santa Clara County, and as an advisor and mentor for a National Association of Asian American Professionals. During his career, he was involved with healthcare operations, transformation, Y2K preparation and remediation, facilities planning for medical centers, leading multiple clinical and support services departments. He has over 100 mentees in his career and continues to be an active mentor. Welcome, George. Thank you for joining us, and we'd love to hear from you.
I was born and raised in Hong Kong, came to the U.S. in 1973, so I lived here for 53 years. So you can figure out I'm 73 years old. I lived in Los Altos for 34 years. I have 3 grown sons and a daughter, all in healthcare. The 3 sons in digital health, my daughter is healthcare consultant. So that's my background. This is my favorite topic. I have discussed this with over 100 individuals in the last 30 years. Mostly in one-on-one or in small groups. Today is the first opportunity I have. I'm still on or no? Oh, okay. Okay. I appreciate the opportunity to share with a big audience. Normally this is 1 to 2 hour discussion, but today I'll do it in 8 minutes. Okay? So I'm going to share my personal opinion. Some of you may not agree, which is okay, as well as my personal experience. Okay. So there are 3 topics I want to talk about. In terms of mental health, I label it 3 levels: clinical, developmental, and cultural. I explain what it is. Clinical is typical, when you have mental health problem, you go to see a Dr. Soshi or a clinical psychologist. Okay, so as a parent, I encourage everyone to have an open mind. Mental health is not something weird. It's just like diabetes, hypertension. It's a chronic disease that needs to be taken care of. There's nothing to be ashamed of. That's number 1. Number 2 is you can have professional help, but the most important part is how you deal with your children who has that issue. I want to have a confession. When I grew up, I was a very, very difficult child. I had 17 out of 18 symptoms of ADHD. Okay, I had, but I still have some right now. But I guess between the age of 12 to 17, my frontal cortex started growing. Then, I get better by the time I'm 17. But a lot of the things that I really changed is after college, when I work, I became a manager when I was 28 years old. So I cannot have the ADHD behavior, so I really, but going back, I have to thank my parents. As a child, they are smart enough to take me to see a clinical psychologist when I was like 9 or 10 years old. So they understand George is not just a naughty kid. He has medical problem, need to be dealt with accordingly. But back then, there's no medication for it. And that's not even ADHD. The term did not come out until 1987. So in 1968, I'm just a hyperactive kid. So thanks to my parents and my grandma, they're very nurturing. They did not beat me up. Keep in mind, at that stage in Hong Kong, a naughty kid, what do you get? Get beat up by the parents. They did not do that. Just through the nurturing, and the second thing is physical activity. When I was 12, I learned how to swim, and then I actually am a good athlete. I joined the swim team. Actually, sport helps my mental health. That's why that's the main thing all my life. Even at my age, I'm still doing multiple sports. Because my ADHD, I have tried 30 plus different sports in my life. So that's the first part, the clinical mental health. Okay. So parent. Second part is developmental mental health. Some of my fellow panel speakers already talk about, particularly in this community, a lot of parents put undue pressure on their kid. They think that's good for them. And then the worst part is you put pressure and also spoil them at the same time. That means as long as they have good grades, they can do everything they want. That's the worst case scenario. My parents did not push me. I'm a pretty smart kid, even though I have ADHD. I did good in math, and everything else I flunked because I just cannot sit down and study for 20 minutes. But they are nurturing, they set boundaries. That's important. It's a fine, and also to, now, I going back and forth as a child, as a parent. I learned from my parents, and when I raised my 3 sons and my daughter, I nudged them. I encouraged them to participate in sports, and this goes hand in hand. Actually, when they're competitive in sport, they're also competitive in school. I don't have to put pressure on them. I have twin boys. The two of them are really at each other. I didn't have to do anything. They did well. You know, both went to UCLA, and they one went to Harvard, went to Northwestern for grad school. I never put any pressure on them. Now, of course, my wife is the disciplinarian, so she will nudge a little bit, but that's extremely important. This one thing, if you forget everything, I would blame parents that cause kids mental health issues because you put too much pressure. So I encourage and I beg you to keep a balance. Now, of course, let them spoil the kid is no good either. So it's a fine balance. If you want, you can look me up on LinkedIn. My last name is SHEA. You can message me, and all you can do is buy me a cup of coffee at Pete's at downtown Los Altos. I can talk to you for as long as you want to. So now the third thing is cultural mental health. I respect Confucius, but I disagree with him big time. There's 3 things like all the Asian, well, even some non-Asian family too. Number 1 is work hard. Second is keep your head down. And third thing is don't say anything until you're 100% sure. I disagree on all 3. Work hard, but keep a work-life balance. I did that all my life. I have a great life, I have to tell you, except the first 8 years, and I was a naughty child before my parents took me to see the clinical psychologist, and I was always getting in trouble. But once they understand, I still get into trouble in school. I talk too much, and I talk back to the teacher. Can you imagine? In 1968, talk back to the teacher in Hong Kong, what you get? Okay. But anyway, So work-life balance, and now all this I teach my kids. They did very well. Second thing is instead of keep your head down, keep your chin up. You know, a lot of time that drive your entire career. Because I kept my chin up. Okay, when I was 28, I was in a department with 20 individuals, 18 of them Caucasian, 2 Asian, and I became the manager. Because I kept my chin up, I spoke up. Okay, and also too, I took my chances. I'm very consultative. When I'm 70% sure, I'll speak up. If I go wrong, I'll say, "Oh yeah, your idea is better." See, you can get away with that. If you wait till 100%, you never speak up. That's why a lot of Asians are very frustrated. If you teach a kid never speak up, that's why they work for Google. They are engineers. They never become a manager. There are very few executives, right? So this is, to me, it's a mental health issue. It hurt the kid for an entire life. They get frustrated. Why I work so hard, remember? And I never get promoted. I never worked that hard. I can't get promoted. I have 15 jobs in the 4 organizations. As a matter of fact, my boss put me, I'm a problem solver, so George is a fixer, but that's another story. The last thing, well, I guess, not hesitate to speak up. That's very important. So those are the 3 areas, just to refresh: the clinical mental health, developmental mental health, and cultural mental health. The developmental and cultural, a lot of people don't think it's a mental health issue. It is. It's just not obvious. Okay? So I beg all the parents, once again, as I said, George, Shay, S-H-E-A, I'm the only Asian with their last name. The rest are Irishmen. That's another story why I got that name, but anyway. So you can look me up and message me, I will respond, and just buy me a cup of coffee, I'd love to talk to you.
Q&A, yeah, do you have the question? Well, while we're getting the questions, keep it up with the panelists one more time. I especially really appreciate all the comments that folks made. I'm a new dad. I've got a little baby boy at home who's almost a year old, so I'm thinking a lot about the things that both the youth and the adults were saying. And as my wife and I just figure out our parenting style, which we're figuring out. And George Schwartz, my baby boy's name is Caden Gaudet. So he's got an Irish name just like you. Yeah. Are there any upstream or preventative services that citizens can help with privately through volunteering or donation? Where do we want to make the most impact? Where is the highest need?
You want to answer that one first?
Keep up a little bit.
Sure, I can share before I pass it over. Thank you for the question, and I want to be a little creative with my response here. I appreciate that effort and your willingness to support. That's really crucial. And I also want to revisit something I said earlier about each individual person, regardless of what role you play, parent, teacher, community member, whatever it may be, being able to cultivate happiness and well-being in themselves as a model for our youth. This is something that George also spoke to. The word private stood out to me because peace in ourselves is where we find peace in the world. It always has to start on an individual level, and we should not be mistaken that it doesn't influence the collective, because the collective is made of the individual. So every small action you take in your home, in your family, checking in with your youth in an open-minded, understanding, non-judgmental way, that is a quote-unquote private but transformative act of care. And that is how we get the ball rolling, so that when we're able to model it in our own lives and our own families, when we get involved in community centers and organizations, we have a lived experience to speak from, and we can be a model for our youth and also for the community around us.
What Quinn said.
Nothing to add.
I will say, if you want to donate, you heard from Becky, there is a matching grants initiative this summer, Palo Community Fund.org, psnyouth.org, Project Safety Net.
Honestly, I would just like to say that, like, what's most important is to kind of, I mean, I touched on it during my little opening remarks. I think that the most important thing that, like, each member of the community at large can do, what the most crucial thing is just, like, don't be afraid to just, like, reach out, like talk to someone, like, compliment someone on maybe a hat that they're wearing, like, when you're walking down the street, like, through Palo. Like, if you guys go to Thursday Live, which is unfortunately happening right now, so you can have live. But if you guys go to, I know they're live. Well, if you guys go to stuff like that, just like talk to someone, like make conversations with someone. Because okay, we're gonna do this. Raise your hands if you guys feel like have felt lonely in this past week. I feel like, yeah, a decent amount of us. Now imagine if all of you guys just talk to each other instead of just like being on your phone all the time. So yeah, I think that's really important.
Thanks for those great answers. How can adults, you know what, you hold that one for a second. I'm going to take that one. Sorry about that. How can adults be good role models for youth in terms of mental health?
Well, I want to, like what I said before, I imitate my parents, and I did exactly what they did to me, to the kids. But unfortunately, a lot of parents, maybe some in the audience, you grew up that your parents push you a lot. You went to good schools, and because you don't speak up, you get frustrated at your work because you don't have a promotion. So, you know, basically, what I shared before, as I said, not all of you will agree with me, but I really encourage you to rethink, to keep a balance on how you raise your kids.
I think part of what George modeled was being open, being a little vulnerable. Our young people look at us, and we hear over many, many years working in the schools in Santa Clara County and San Mateo County, how it's not, young people will say, well, my parents aren't putting pressure on me to whatever it is, get the grade, get the college, get the career. It's just a thing. And so they may see the trusted adults around them as these superhumans. Mm-hmm. And so when you are sharing your story with the young person, at the right time, right? Not an overshare, not a burden, but you will be amazed, and you have it, those of you who are nodding your heads. You can open the door to a conversation with your child or with your mentee or your niece or your nephew. And they will learn things about you that they never knew because you open a little bit of yourself up to vulnerability to share perhaps a struggle that you had. It's not to say that your struggle is their struggle, you're walking in their shoes, but if they hear that you've been through some stuff, and here's how your friend showed up for you, or here's how you showed up for someone else when they were struggling, it can really open the door to a conversation that you may not have had before. And as an adult, you'll find that the more you do that, the more you will cultivate your own well-being. And young people need to see how we do that. So it is even more of what we do than what we say, but what we say is important. And as Iris and Quinn reminded us, try to say as little as possible, but listen as much as possible. But when they ask us to speak, don't be afraid to share some of the things that you've been through and how you got through it. You probably got through it with a little help from your friends.
I mean, that's exactly what I was going to say. Did you see my notes? That's exactly what I was going to say. But, you know, for you, so, you know, do that, exactly that. Be honest with your kids and just try to have an honest conversation.
Yeah, I'll round this out here. On the question about how adults can model good mental health, I want to give a shout out to my mom, who's here in the audience.
All right, Mom.
She's a tremendous inspiration to me because lately we've been having this conversation about how to care for our well-being, especially during high times of stress. And I'm thinking about how our society is becoming more and more fast-paced by the day, and how that feeds our habit energies of restlessness and striving. We're always trying to climb the ladder to get to the next step. Perhaps because we think happiness is somewhere in the distance, rather than right now here in the present moment. So I think